everyone, and welcome to the second day of the MBPLA Legislative Summit. We had a fabulous day yesterday, and today promises to be just as informative. Just to give you a layout of how the day will go, we're starting off with our morning coffee, and at 10:30 Central Standard Time, we will break off into our master classes. Those are running concurrently, so you should have links for both, and you can choose to be in one or the other, or you can go back and forth between the two. But just bear in mind that those were created to allow you guys to ask your questions, and we've got some great panelists lined up for those. And then we'll wrap up the day with our final panel, headed up by Representative Kendrick Meek, and we've got the president of Tennessee State University on that panel, as well as a number of seasoned federal and state lobbyists. So we are excited about what the day has in store. Without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic over to the moderator of your morning coffee, Miss Yolanda Cash Jackson.
Good morning, good morning. Oh my gosh, I'm not quite ready yet. Is it time yet? Oh, it's time. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Just give me a minute. Let me get myself ready. We're going to talk about making moves, making money moves this morning. And I know I got my good friend, Greg Jones, with me, and we just going to have coffee this morning. So I also have with me Tiffany Raspberry and Raymond Bell, and we're going to just talk about what we need to do. So anyway, just give me a minute and I'll finish getting dressed. And Greg's gonna take his off too. Y'all caught us by surprise this morning. That was a joke. But anyway, we thought we'd add some humor this morning. We are having a great time at our first summit of the National Black Professional Lobbyists Association. And if you can't have fun, then you can't make any money, and you can't make those money moves that we're talking about. All right, so let's start out. I wanted to start out with our co-founder, Greg Jones. Greg, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? And my first question is, how did you get into lobbying? And why did you get into lobbying? Surely not to wear your robe on a Saturday morning.
Yeah, well, we just celebrated J5 for Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity, so I had to give it a shout out this morning to all the Kappas in the land today. Good morning. Yes, how did I get into lobbying? Great question. And the honest answer is, I have no idea. Finishing college, I started out wanting to have my own set of independent insurance agencies. So when I first finished college, I started out in the insurance world. And so I've been in sales. I always wanted to work for myself. So I moved around from insurance to, I had opportunity to buy a snack food franchise. And that kind of fell to the wayside. And while in between looking for a job, I first met a couple of guys in governmental affairs and didn't know anything about the lobbying world or government affairs, period. Asked them in between looking for career changes, say, hey guy, I don't know what you do, but I got a feeling this is something that I want to do. So he introduced me to a couple of lobbyists. And at that time, he was like, okay, I know a couple of people that you can meet that might be looking for African-American lobby to put on their team. So he introduced me to a guy that ran a state employees union. And the guy brought me on. And next thing you know, this guy took me under his wings and started taking me into meetings. At the time, they were like the number 1, 2, or 3 lobbying firms in the state of Alabama, and introduced me to the government affairs world. He took me into the brainstorming meeting session, and I was like a little kid at a candy store, just sitting back with amazement on these guys are really running the state of Alabama. So I sat and listened and absorbed all of that. Next thing you know, I got the political bug. So, wow, I think I can do this. Fast forward 4 years, I decided that it was time to go back on my own as being an entrepreneur spirited person. So got into by making relationships through those 4 years. I made some relationships with some of the people that were contract lobbyists with corporations. So I reached out to them. Hey, I'm getting ready to start my own firm. I would love to have you as my initial client. In 2005, bam, there it is. The Jones Group was founded. So to answer your question, I fell into it, not knowing what I was going in. 21 years later, I'm still here, and I'm having the time of my life, having an influence on policies and the effects that we can have on influencing state law and making changes that way.
So you just fell into it. My story is similar. I feel better now. I thought I was lost, but now I'm found. Listen, money moves. Tiffany, how'd you get started in lobbying?
I'm sorry, I'm muted. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for having me, Yolanda. I got started in lobbying after I relocated back to New York. I had been in DC for a couple of years, and I moved back to New York to work in local government. After a few years, there had been a recent changeover in the leadership of government because of term limits that we have here in New York. And one of the top lobbying firms here offered me a position. At the time, I probably, my salary working at the city council in New York City was very, very little. So the fact that the lobbying firm offered me what at the time seemed to be double my salary, which still wasn't very much because I was probably making, in the 20s of thousands of dollars back then. I joined a lobbying firm when I was 25 years old or 26 years old, and I've been active in lobbying ever since that time. I always understood that I wanted to be a lobbyist. I never would have thought that I would have been given an opportunity at such a young age. I knew that there were, 3 ways that you could influence government, and lobbyist was one of the most significant ways. And there weren't many people that looked like us. As a matter of fact, there were only maybe 1 or 2. I had only known one African-American woman on the Hill who was a lobbyist while I was in DC. And in New York City, there was only 1 other Black woman who was a lobbyist. So I just understood that we needed a seat at that table if we wanted to make a difference in public policy, at every level of the decision-making process.
Great. Mr. Bell, tell us about how you got into lobbying. Did you fall into it as well?
Well, I won't necessarily say I fell into it. I'm going to say I saw people who didn't look like me doing it, and I saw what they were doing it. I saw how they were living. I saw a path, and I just kind of said, if they can, we can. And I thought replicating it was a good way to go about it. I worked in state government, in the legislature, and then in the lieutenant governor's office, and in the governor's office. And then I had a lot of responsibilities with the legislative liaisons, and it just kind of took to me, and I kind of liked it. And then at the time, Alabama was very strong blue, and then there were a lot of people who looked like me and that were friends of mine or friends of friends of mine that were in position. So I thought it was, an opportunity to get into it while I had those relationships. So I left state government and actually went to the other side, which is, the good side that I consider. And it's been 22, 23 years, and more so lately, a whole lot more, because I've joined a large law firm that has a concentration in a practice group for lobbying. And so, it kind of went from wading in the water to swimming very fast pretty quickly.
Oh, listen, you just hit my next question. You guys have 3 different kinds of firms. Mr. Bell, you're at, if I can call you Raymond, it's, coffee time.
Mr. Bell is 78 years old, and he's probably still asleep.
When I said that, my people call me Miss Jackson. That's my mother-in-law. I'm Yolanda. Okay, here we go. Listen, we have 3 different kinds of firms. Woman-owned firm. Greg has, I think, 3 or 4 associates that work with him, and you're at a large law firm, as I am. So even within the different types of firms, what differences do you find in the type of clients, how much you are paid, access, and then hit on client development based on the type of firms that you come from? Let's see, let's rotate it. Tiffany, you want to start us off with that question?
I keep talking while I'm on mute.
That's okay.
Sure. I actually have worked in multiple types of firms. So initially, I started out in a large lobbying practice that was New York City and New York State based. Then I joined a law firm and I worked as on the associate level of a law firm, even though I'm not a lawyer, as an in-house lobbyist. And then, of course, I went out and started my own business. And I think at every level, you know, the jux of the work was exactly the same. You know, people want individuals that are dedicated to their craft, knowledgeable about the issues, who can provide, you know, a wide array of services to them in the government relations sphere. I think the difference between what I offer now as opposed to the larger firms is that I offer an individualized service. At the larger firms, you can offer a great deal of wraparound services. So at a law firm, you can offer not just the lobbying services, but you can offer legal services. In some instances, you might be able to also offer PR services. You know, I offer right now in my firm a very specific streamlined service. I am actually on leave right now from lobbying because I joined a political campaign. But prior to that, and probably in the next 6 months when I reconvene my firm, I offer services to clients that are very specialized and individualized. So you get to reach me and talk to me all the time. That's not really something that you might get in a larger firm. In a larger firm, you might be assigned to an associate or someone, you might sign up with a partner, but get your contract might be serviced on a day-to-day basis by someone who's more junior. As far as client development at the larger firms, the partners represent so many different interests. So a lot of business trickles down from other divisions of the company. In my firm, I am constantly seeking out business opportunities and figuring out ways to service the client. You know, a woman in my industry here in New York told me, you should figure out how you can be everything to your client, especially when you're running a small business. So you don't want your client to ever consider making a move in the government affairs realm without speaking to you first. So those are the kinds of services that I offer in my business. But when you join larger firms, I think that in your practice, you offer a wider array of services than you do in some of the smaller firms.
Raymond, do you agree with her? I mean, I'm at a large firm, let me tell you, 24/7. Is that the case with you?
Oh, yeah. Well, I agree with much of that. I will tell you that my business development internally is basically cross-selling. And I try my best to figure out when they're onboarding a new client or a client takes on a new line of business to try to figure out some avenue to be in a position to try to help them or to provide GR or to ask them, you know, how we can be a value add, a plus up service for them. Externally, business development is keeping your ear to the ground, running down a lot of things. You know, one thing in Alabama that is tend to be, you know, very helpful. Somebody many, many years ago thought RFPs was the best way to hire lawyers in Alabama. And so there's constantly RFPs going out. But, you know, it's being relevant, staying on top of things. I try to push a lot of information out. You know, I think when I was in college and law school, everybody had a newsletter. And so now electronically, just pushing information and doing what I do is kind of my business development. And can't understate what word of mouth has done for my practice. I mean, meeting good people like the folks on this Zoom call and having relationships has really been the key.
Greg, do you see any differences with your type of practice?
The only difference I would say, you don't come in by working, having your own firm as an independent lobbyist. Sometimes you had a luxury of being in a practice or within the corporate realm that clients would come to you from a partner within or something like that. Being on your own, it's really, you eat what you kill. You have to get up early in the morning. You have to be the cook, the bottle washer, and the janitor at the same time with your own practice. I made a practice of getting up early, being the first one on the scene, and being the last one who leaves every day. There's a lot of components that's not only when you're working for somebody else, but when you're working for yourself, you have to be the one who go after clients. You have to be the one who entertain your clients. You have to be the one who serves your clients. You have to be the one who oversee the reports that go out to your clients. So you have to do a little bit of all things. And I've been fortunate enough to have a team with me as I've grown. And it's really grown in the last 4 or 5 years. We've been fortunate, so I can delegate a lot of those responsibilities to some of my teammates. But yes, you have to eat what you kill again, and just really hustle to go out and get clients, keep those clients, and you're competing with about 400 or 500 other lobbyists that's doing the same thing that you're doing. So that's one of the things I see difference as if you're working for yourself or you're a contract lobbyist. It's really all up to you and network. And having organization like NBPLA helps you with your network. I know sometimes Yolanda and I on the phone talking about, okay, who do you have in Alabama that I could work for? Who do you have in Florida, Greg, that I can solicit for a client? And same with Raymond. We actually share clients together now. So it's about building the network, and you have to be able to do that, especially if you're on your own as a contract lobbyist.
Boy, that you said a word on that. So I want to.
Can I jump in and say one more thing?
Sure.
And you got to make sure you feed each other. You know, one of the things Greg and I have is a bona fide relationship. If somebody comes to me and I can't do it, I don't have 3 or 4 people that I consider. I have one, and that's him. And I think that's important because I think our interests are aligned, the way we do business and how we want to grow our practices. And I don't think that a lot of my other peers share that here in the state.
That's a good point. Tiffany, what do you say?
I just also wanted to say that one of the things that I found to be the most difficult when I started my firm, and that I still struggle with every day, is the back end of the business. You know, you can't get paid and operate if you don't manage the back end of your affairs well. And so I always try to tell people that when they're thinking about going into business on their own, always think about the fact that you need to develop your business skill set. And that needs to be as strong as your lobbying skill set, because running a business is just as important as providing a good service to your clients.
That is so important. As lawyers, we know that if you don't build a client, you don't get paid.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't work for food. I don't know about you, right? So listen, you touched on something I want to unpack a little bit, Greg and Raymond, and that is you talked about competition. You talked about competition and friendly competition. One of our sessions, we had a young lobbyist on that suggested that competition wasn't a good thing, or that there was competition. What say you? Is there such a thing as competition? Tiffany, I'm going to start with you. You know, who are you competing with? Is there a competition? How do they treat you? Do you have to sleep with your fist ball up? What?
So there definitely is competition. For many years, I felt like I was competing against some of the larger, white-led firms in the state. And still, day to day, I still sort of feel that way. I mean, I don't want to go too much into detail, but I feel like there's a competitiveness. I find that a firm that's billing millions of dollars a year is still going to compete heavily with me for, a $5,000 or $6,000 a month contract. People are, become large firms because they try to monopolize an industry. And so whereas we might be thinking, oh, I'm just going to carve out a niche for myself, some firms are saying we want to dominate the entire market. One of the things that we've realized as Black lobbyists here in New York State is that we're stronger together. So even if we are working against on different sides of an issue, we've united as a coalition, because like you said, if you can't take on a piece of business, perhaps you can refer it to someone else, in the social circle to make sure that they're getting the business. But I felt like I was competing not just for business, but also for equality, making sure that I was being paid equitably to my peers who were at the white male-led firms in the state. And it took a long time. I feel like when I first started out, I was only getting paid perhaps, 40 or 50 cents on the dollar compared to my white male counterparts. And it took a significant amount of time for me to get to a point where, I'm going to ask for the same amount of money, even if they don't give it to me. But the starting point that we begin at is what you're paying, everyone else in the market, not what you think I deserve to be paid.
Great point. And I struggle with that as well. What is your value? If you're asked to lobby the entire Black Caucus, we have 28 members of the Black Caucus. And I went to F school, they grade schools in Florida. I went to F school, my elementary school, but I can count. If y'all making $5,000 for 28 people, you making $5,000 for one, something wrong with that picture.
Exactly.
So tell me about the competition. How did you guys decide that you were going to work together instead of working against each other?
I think that, when you're trying to survive, your survival instincts kick in. And I think that we just looked around and realized we were stronger together than we were apart. For many years, many of us were not of that mindset, but we just realized also that when we looked at, what some of the other firms were doing and other people in the industry, they were also working in a united front, even though it might seem on face value that they are in competition with one another, and they would come together to, advance causes and to service clients. And so we realized that as, Black people in the industry, we needed to be doing the same.
Right. So I'm going to shift a little bit because the other misnomer or myth is that you only lobby Democrats.
Exactly.
Craig Raymond and I are in red states. New York is blue.
Yes.
So red states. Talk to me about lobbying in a red state. Greg, you are a master, besides being a master golfer, because I know that's how you do some of it. But how do you, as a Black lobbyist, lobby differently, if at all, in a red state? And then Raymond, I want you to tell me about when they flipped from blue to red. Greg?
Yeah. Lobbying in a red state is still challenging today. I have story after story after story where I can tell you that I lost the client because of perception during the interview process that you're automatic in the blue party. When Alabama became a supermajority red state, after Democrat had a supermajority for over 100 years, our business was doing well. I had probably about 17, 18 clients. When we switched to red parties, all of a sudden you had an influx of white lobbyists it seems like from the age of 17 all the way up, the 25-year-olds coming in and say, hey, I worked on Republican X campaign. I worked on his financial team. And they couldn't spell lobbyists like I did when I first started. And I remember in 2010, when I was interviewing with a top Fortune 500 company. During the interview, the guy said, Greg, we like you, you're good. You have demonstrated that you are successful in the Democratic world. But now that Alabama is a supermajority House and Senate and executive branch red state, we need somebody in the red party. I was like, okay. And I immediately said, who told you I wasn't in the red party? How did you come to that conclusion? Well, Republicans in charge and there are a lot of people in, and all of a sudden my client list went from 18, 17 to about 12. At one point, I think it dropped down to about 10. So it was a constant battle from that point on to just build and work hard. The thing I've tried to pride myself is I'm going to outwork you. I'm going to show you that I can have a relationship within the governor's office. I'm going to show you I can have a relationship with the Senate Pro Tem and the Speaker's office just as well as you can. So Yolanda, yes. Yeah, I have friends that like to play golf that as our elected official. And before we had a sweeping ethics reform, we could do those things legally and just be a relationship. A lot of people think when you play golf, you go out and play and you cut deals on it. No, it's really not about that. It's really about having a relationship with someone, whether you're playing golf or taking someone to dinner, just getting to know them. In a golf course, you have 5 hours with someone. You get to know their wife, you get to know their kids, you get to know about how they, what church they go to. And even if you don't talk about, it's a myth out there that when you wine and dining folks, you're talking about trying to twist their arm to pass a piece of legislation. That's not true. My goal is I get to know them as an individual. Then when I go back to them the next day or the week after, I can say, hey, how's your wife? How's your kid? What do y'all do? What did you teach in the Sunday school class this Sunday? So those are kind of relationship things. And that's what I say, that's how you make yourself relevant in a super red state. Build a relationships. You will find that you have more in common than you have apart if you sit down and build a relationship with someone. So I think that's one of the key things that I have been able to thrive and have success in a super majority red state.
Raymond, you agree with that?
I do. And I think another advantage that we have here in Alabama, if you're an incumbent, you pretty much die in office unless you get in some trouble or walk away. And so a lot of the people who are now in charge weren't in charge. And obviously they were a lot easier to work with when they weren't in charge. But because they remained in place and you have built a relationship with them, that relationship has continued. And then I think as they have gotten peers with the new folks in the majority party that have come on, when they get an opportunity to see you interfacing with the old heads and y'all got a lot of things in common and y'all are comfortable with each other, they're more comfortable. I mean, the only thing that I would add to what Greg said, and it's really kind of doubling down on it, is we always have to be up earlier, last late, and seem to be smarter. I have to sometimes furnish a white paper to show that I've studied the issue and give it to somebody in black and white where some of our counterparts can walk in and kind of just pull some things that they've highlighted from a bill. So I think sometimes, and I hate that I use this sometimes, but I do it all the time, but sometimes we got to look magical just to be normal. And so that's part of what we do to keep ourselves relevant and in the forefront.
A powerful. And you know what? This is refreshing because I thought was the only one. Listen, I use in Florida, if you're not a Gator, you're not nothing. So I'm a Florida Gator and I've used that Gator Nation thing so till it works. I mean, you find commonalities, and I think that's a point that you wanna make. Listen, I'm going back to Tiffany because something happened on January 20th, right? That, Black women were already great. We know that. We already know that we were the backbone of the party, but 91% of Black women voted for Biden. And now we have a Black woman as vice president. Does that affect what we do as lobbyists in the states, particularly in red states? Tiffany, let's start with you because you've had experience with Higher Heights of America. A lot of people may not even know what that is. And let me tell you, a couple of places that I want to be in my lifetime, one of them is in the New York Times. And Tiffany was featured with some Black women in the New York Times. So that's high cotton, as we would say in Miami. So Tiffany, is Kamala being in Washington with some of the women of color that we've seen in different places, is that going to kind of reshape influence, do you think, at the state level as well?
So I think it will. And initially I said that I didn't know that it would. Initially when she was elected, I thought to myself, well, this is great. This is a proud moment for us as Black women, but I don't know that this is going to change the hearts and minds of individuals in our country. But I think seeing a woman, a Black woman, that's second in line to lead the most powerful country in the world, now puts us all up at bat. Because before, I think in corporate America, in our lobbying industries and state capitals across America, people looked at Black women and thought, oh, you know, that young woman, that young girl is very nice, she's very smart, but I don't know if she can lead, or I don't know if I want to take a chance on her representing my issue. But with Kamala at the helm of leadership in this country, now there's no excuse to say, well, we don't know if a Black woman is capable of taking on this leadership position, because a Black woman has basically taken on the most prestigious leadership position in the United States, in the world. And so now I think that people, we've always made the short list of applicants for jobs and leadership positions in America, but we're oftentimes looked over for someone else. But I think now we are getting those opportunities that we rightfully deserve. And I also want to say, you know, a lot of people are saying, well, you know, it's the Black woman's time because of Kamala. And this is not an affirmative action moment for Black women, right?
Yeah.
We are highly educated. We show up first, we leave last, we work through pain and struggle. You know, how many times have we gone into work and serviced our clients when we have found ourselves struggling with social issues, family dilemmas, and all kinds of things, and no one has ever even known that we had problems at home, but we showed up and we never complained. And so I just want everyone to be clear that no one is giving Black people anything. We rightfully deserve the opportunities that we are finally being considered for and being awarded.
I'm about ready to take up an offering after that one. You preach.
Hey,
You preach
Yolanda,
that. Yes.
Yolanda, may I say, I would right now just like to give hats off to all the sisters, the Black women that are in government affairs space. This is not an industry. The government affairs, the lobbying world is not an industry, or it was designed for Black people to be involved in it at this level. You know, you always say you have to put your big boy pants on as a Black male. You have to put your big boy pants on to operate in the space that we're operating in it successfully. And you times that times 10 if you're a Black female in this industry. So, you know, I know in the South as a whole that you are female in a male industry known as a male dominant industry. You put a female in that industry, and then on top of that, you add a couple of shades of pigmentation on your skin to make you look like your sister in this industry. It is extremely difficult and hard in this industry. So you have to put your big boys, your big girls, your big mamas and big daddy pants on to be successful in this industry as a Black female. So hopefully it's an encouragement to see Kamala as Vice President of the United States to say, hey, look, if I can do it and rise up to Vice President of the United States, you can do it in the state of New York. You can do it in the state of Florida as a sister if you're determined and you have the desire and the will to kick the door in and demand that you should be there and you have the right to be there.
I totally agree with you. You know, sometimes when you're going through, you don't really know until you're going through. Mm-hmm. So I thank you for that. Raymond, you see any change there with Kamala? Are you starting to see it in your clients already, or people that are reaching out to you now that didn't maybe reach out to you before?
So funny you should say that, but I help support our federal practice in a very minor way. But I've been involved in a few more calls internally in the last 3 weeks. So that part's changed. But I do think that as she does well, and as she represents her office well and all of us well, that many will take note and recognize, because I'm a firm believer that the opportunities that Greg and myself and others have had is because of our hard work, but it's also because those folks have recognized, dang, they really can do it. Dang, they really are outstanding. So if she's doing it and they're saying, dang, she's outstanding, those that look like her should be given the opportunity, if not just the benefit of the doubt. And then when we get that opportunity, we just got to take it, run with it, and score the ball over and over and over again.
All right, I agree with that. I mean, I look at this and, add the pandemic on top of it. I mean, we can't not put the pandemic on top of it. And a lot of us have gone virtual and we've done a lot of adjustments. Do you think that going virtual has affected our lobbying practice and maybe level the playing field for Black lobbyists?
Well, I think
Raymond's saying no. Tiffany, you say yes?
so. I think that going virtual demonstrates who actually has solid relationships, right? Because when you can't go down to the Capitol and sort of force your way in front of someone's face, then you have to have a real relationship where you can call them up at home, or you can call them up, send them a text message and get a real response. So I think that there are a lot of people who just would say, well, we have relationships with everyone. So, like you said, Greg and Raymond, people questioned whether or not you had the ability to lobby red leadership, right, in your state governments. But nobody ever questions whether or not red leadership has the ability to lobby Black legislators. There's never that reverse. So everyone always wants to say, well, I don't know if you have relationships outside of the Black community, but our peers who are white never are questioned if they have access into Black leadership. But I think that now that we're in a virtual world, people, corporations, business interests can't really take a chance. So now they have to say, well, who has this relationship with who? And they're looking for that. And so this is when you put your money where your mouth is, right? If you have a real relationship with someone, Greg, because you've played golf with them and you know where they live, well, then now you're up at bat, because the individuals who've sort of just been, pretending like I can get to anybody because of who I am, right? Because of who I am, I know they'll talk to me. That's no longer the case. So I think that the virtual world has helped us in a lot of ways. And we have to just step up and shine where we can, because we do have solid relationships with people. And these are the things that we have to highlight and demonstrate during this time.
Yeah, and I add to that. I give you a real life example. When the pandemic hit in March of last year, the Alabama legislature went on spring break, and they didn't come back until like May to finish up the budgets, which we have to have a certain date. We have to constitutional pass the budget by a certain date. So they came back for like 2 weeks to do that. During that time, lobbyists weren't allowed in the State House. So at that time, we had the Senate on the floor debating bills. We had committees going on, and we had the House on the floor debating bills all at one time. So I had my desktop, my laptop, and my iPad out at the same time. And because of relationship, as Tiffany said, I'm on my phone texting the members on the floor of the House and the Senate, and also watching the committee meeting and texting legislators that are sitting on the committee meeting panel saying, hey, this affects my client. I want to do this. I want to do that. So if you don't have a relationship, you cannot. And as watching it, you can see when a member is up there and then you texting them, and you can actually watch them responding to your text messages. I was like, okay, cool. And then you see them go to the microphone or make a comment in the committee because you send them something to ask the question or to make a point on behalf of your clients. Relationship does that. Relationship give you an open access to the members that you have relationships with. So virtually, I had just as successful ending legislative session in last year than I would have if I would have been there in person. So if you had a relationships virtually, you still can get it done.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point. I mean, one of the things that I did was I reached out to particularly members in the Republican Party to make sure that I shored up those relationships. We had the privilege of having a former speaker at our firm for a minute. So I got a chance to understand how important that was. So I just called them up. Hey, what are you doing? You want to do virtual drinks? Had a lot of virtual drinks.
Mm-hmm.
And so when sessions started, listen, it was open season. They're willing to sit down and talk, because nobody can, in Florida, no one can come in the Capitol at all. So that's the only way that you can talk. And we have members with COVID. So people not trying to get Rona, they're willing to go on the computer and figure it out. So listen, I want to know, and you know, we talked about client development, but what's the next money move you think in lobbying? You know, whether it be certain areas of expertise or certain practices or type of lobbying firms. Are big lobbying firms dead? Are small lobbying firms dead? What's the next money move in lobbying?
Well, I think that I've noticed a lot of individuals in New York transition into strategic consulting services.
Mhm.
So perhaps you find a major corporation or an industry that's trying to do work in your state or your city, and you kind of put together a team for them. You put together the strategy, right? It's like the step before the lobbying. Maybe you even identify the key lobbyists who should be on the team so that a goal can be accomplished. Something that I'm thinking of is like when an Uber goes into a city and they want to launch their business there, you know, they might hire a strategic consultant to help them figure out how to iron out and lay out the pieces before they even launch. And I just think that as Black people, we need to be thinking about doing business at that level as well. You know, there's a lot of money to be made as lobbyists, but we also need to be seeking out those leadership positions where we're putting together the teams and creating the opportunities for our peers in our, you know, various cities and states.
Great. What's the next money move, Raymond? I'm writing this down. What's the next money move?
So I'll piggyback some of what Tiffany just said. You know, I think showing folks how to be better than they are, helping them grow their strategic plans. I mean, I think one of the things that I started doing about a year and a half ago was trying to meet with clients at the end of their business year or in their planning stages for any upcoming year, and then try to work and focus with them to either expand it or provide value adds or to create teaming relationships that either they may not have thought of or that they're thinking of, but they may have graduated it to another stage. And I really think that, you know, the day of sitting back and having a client call you and saying, oh man, we got a problem, can you get this done? Or, hey, we're hearing this is coming down the pike. Can you make sure that it's this way or not that way is over? And I think that, you know, what I try to do, because I am a lawyer, what I try to sell myself as is, yes, I'm a lobbyist, but I also have a legal degree. And in your strategic plan, let me try to help you facilitate putting something in place or helping you create or draft legislation that could better assist you in your plan within our state. An example, you know, everybody knows we're trying to get a lottery, and Alabama's trying to open up gaming. Well, instead of just waiting for somebody to call me and say, hey, we're interested in that, we've contacted some folks, we've been in contact with some folks that are doing this in other states, showing them the proposed law, drafting amendments and saying, look, if y'all are interested in entering this space, we can help you. We have the relationships. Here's the current law, or here's the law that needs to be changed. We're the drafters of it. Let us kind of carry, you know, that load for you. And then, you know, I'm not shy about it. You know, I walk in the rooms and tell people all the time, look, we got a handful of lobbyists, 5 on the state side and about 5 on the federal side, but we got 300 litigators behind us. You got a problem, we can fix it. And so that's what I'm doing.
All right. Well, listen, we're at the end. So, Greg, I'm going to let you have the last word because Terry is like, no more. You got to cut it off. I know we've set up NBPLA, and it was your vision, really, that got us all into this together. And I think for the audience, those that are, you know, wanting to be lobbyists and those who are lobbyists that want to expand their business, share with us your biggest or most transformative money move, and then we'll close it out.
Great question. I think my greatest and biggest money move, it goes back to what Raymond and Tiffany talked about and hit on, is okay. You've done the lobbying world. You've been successful in the lobbying. Now it's time to look at things. You can have the opportunity to look out to add value to your clients other than just lobbying. If you know there's an issue coming up, Offer your service that say, hey, I know the people across the state and in other areas where you can be an assistant to, where it's a grassroots campaign, whether it's being involved in on their political campaigns. So you're gonna have to broaden your horizon. Yolanda and I talked about a couple of days ago. She said that that she used to be a part where she wanted a piece of the deal in some areas. Look at opportunity where it does not conflict with ethics laws in your state to be a part of a deal. I got a good friend of ours that's a part of and helped us really do a lot of recruiting for this particular summit, Rufus Montgomery. He said, look, if I can't be a part of the deal, then, I really don't want to do it anymore. So I'm looking at getting part of the deal on a lot of areas. So broaden your horizon, think outside the box, see what other issues your clients have and be a part of putting those things together.
All right. Well, thank you, panelists. Thank you, Raymond. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Tiffany. And for those of you who are watching, we are about to go into our concurrent sessions. We have one on Mentor Me. We touched on mentoring a little bit, but how to climb the government affairs ladder. And then we have best practices for state lobbying. We have some great panelists there. And so those are concurrent, so you can go to either one of those. I'm going to go back and forth. And then you have gotten the link to do that. And then we'll be closing out this afternoon with why state and federal lobbyists need each other. So ironic that that's being led by former Congressman Kendrick Meek, a very good friend of mine who kind of got me into this thing. We'll talk about that. I'll be active on that one. And then after that, we're going to have a time to just hang out. I think we're going to start around, I guess it's 2:30 Central Time. So 3:30 our time, we're going to hang out. Make sure you hang around to do that. And so we can talk about ways to help you make your money move. Thank you. We'll see you at the next session.